Picture the richest person you can imagine. Private jets, gold, a vault stacked with cash. Now try to picture that exact same wealth 30,000 years ago. And here's the strange part, you can't. Because for almost all of human history, being rich in the way you mean it was simply impossible. There were no bank accounts, no property, often nothing you could even keep. So what did rich actually look like to your ancestors? The answer overturns almost everything you assume about wealth and about why it exists at all. Let's start with the myth. You probably assume there have always been rich people and poor people, that somebody somewhere was always on top. But for the hunter-gatherers who made up most of human history, that's just wrong. In a small mobile band, being rich was close to impossible. And the reason is beautifully simple. If your whole group walks to a new camp every few weeks, you can only own what you can carry. A pile of treasure isn't wealth. It's a burden you have to haul on your back. So nobody bothered. The anthropologist James Woodburn described how these societies actually worked. He called many of them immediate return. You hunt today, you eat today. You gather today, you share today. Almost nothing is stored. And here's the quiet genius of it. If nothing is stored, there's nothing to hoard. No stockpile means no one can pull ahead of everyone else. In a world without storage, the safest place to keep wealth was inside other people, as a favor owed. On top of that, these groups actively punished showing off. A hunter who bragged was mocked until he stopped. Wealth wasn't just absent, it was forbidden. But that doesn't mean they had nothing precious. It just wasn't gold. The first treasures were different. These were treasures you wore, not treasures you stacked. A string of beads, each one drilled by hand, representing hundreds of hours of work, rare seashells carried from a distant coast, a lump of red ochre ground into precious pigment, and something you'd never think of as luxury, fat. In a hungry world, a store of calories was worth more than any jewel. To your ancestors, being rich meant something we've forgotten. It meant time, relationships, and a little beauty you could carry with you. And once in a while, archaeology shows us someone who had more. At a site called Sungir in Russia, there's a burial from around 34,000 years ago. The bodies were covered in thousands of beads carved from mammoth ivory. Each bead may have taken an hour or more to make. That is a staggering amount of labor wrapped around a single person. And two of the Sungir bodies were children, adorned as richly as any adult. Some see it as one of the earliest hints of high status. But notice something crucial. That wealth went into the ground with them. It wasn't a fortune that grew and passed down through a family. And what it really means is still debated. So when did real, lasting wealth appear? The answer is, when people stopped moving, everything changed with one invention: storage. When humans began to farm and to store food, something new entered the world, a surplus. For the first time, there was something you could own, guard, and pass on. Grain could be hoarded in a way a fresh kill never could. A full granary wasn't just food, it was wealth, sitting in one place with your name on it. And the moment wealth could pile up, it began to pile up unevenly. Some families ended up with more, some with less. Archaeologists who measure ancient inequality find the same pattern again and again. It climbs as farming and permanent settlements spread. Agriculture didn't just feed people, it invented the rich and the poor. And that early wealth often had four legs. In many of the first wealthy societies, riches weren't counted in coins. They were counted in cattle. A herd of cows or sheep was a savings account that could walk. And unlike grain, a herd could grow all on its own, breeding more wealth every year. It was status, security, and the price of a marriage all at once. It's the same instinct you have when you build up savings. Only your ancestors measured their fortune in animals, not stocks. And then, wealth learned to shine. At a cemetery called Varna, in what's now Bulgaria, archaeologists made a jaw-dropping discovery. In graves about 6,500 years old, they found gold, a lot of gold. One grave held so much of it that Varna is often described as holding more worked gold than the rest of the world combined at the time. This is some of the earliest clear evidence of a truly rich individual. Someone in that community had been raised far above everyone else. By now, status had hardened into something solid, something golden, buried with a single powerful person. But here's the twist you won't expect. In many early societies, the way to be powerful wasn't to hoard your wealth. It was to give it away. The anthropologist Marshall Sahlins described the big man. He rose to power not by keeping the most, but by hosting the most, by throwing feasts, handing out gifts, and provisioning everyone around him. On the Pacific Northwest coast, this reached a spectacular extreme in a ceremony called the Potlatch. A leader would give away or even destroy huge piles of his own possessions. The more he gave up, the greater his status became. Generosity, not greed, was the true currency of respect. Your reputation was your fortune, and you spent your goods to grow it. Think about how strange that is. Wealth measured not by what you could keep, but by what you could afford to lose. You can still feel both of these instincts fighting inside you. The urge to accumulate, to have more than the person next door, and the urge to be generous, to be the one who gives and provides. Both are ancient. But remember which came first. For hundreds of thousands of years, showing off your wealth was the worst thing you could do. Sharing it was the best. So picture that richest person again. The jets, the gold, the vault. That kind of wealth isn't a permanent feature of being human. It's an invention, and a surprisingly recent one. It arrived with grain and herds and the first villages that never moved. For most of the human story, you weren't measured by what you owned. You were measured by what you gave. The fortune you chase is new. The instinct to share it is far, far older. The richest person in an ancient camp wasn't the one with the fullest hands. It was the one with the most open ones. And somewhere underneath the wanting, a part of you still knows it.